I never thought I'd be sitting here telling this story. Never in a million years. I'm not the kind of person who believes in, things that can't be explained. I fix things for a living. Cell towers, transmission equipment. I deal with signals, frequencies, concrete problems with logical solutions. That's my world. Or at least it was. My name is Michael. I worked, I don't know anymore, for Clear Connect Telecommunications. 15 years installing and maintaining cell towers across Arizona. Never missed a day, never filed a false report. Ask anyone. They'll tell you I'm reliable, rational. Maybe too serious sometimes, but definitely not someone who makes things up. It was just a routine maintenance call. Tower Jabra 47B, about 30 miles outside of Wickenburg. One of those spots where you can drive for an hour and not see another car. September 17th. I remember the date because I'd been looking forward to my day off the next day, planning to do some stargazing. Ironic, I guess, considering what happened. I arrived on site around 7 p.m. The sun was starting to set, but I had my work lights and wanted to finish before morning. The company had been getting complaints about reception dropping in that area, and the diagnostic system was showing some kind of power fluctuation. Nothing I hadn't seen 100 times before. The first weird thing, and I remember this clearly, was my equipment. My signal analyzer kept showing these pulses, like something was interfering with the readings. I recalibrated it twice, but the pattern continued. Irregular bursts, almost like something was probing the tower. I called my supervisor, left a message about the unusual readings. Then my phone died, completely dead, even though it had been at 82% just minutes before. I wasn't too concerned. It happens out there sometimes. I figured I'd finish the job and report the full details later. Around 9:30, I was up on the platform, about 180 feet above ground, replacing a faulty transmitter panel. That's when my work light started flickering. Not just flickering, pulsing, in the same irregular pattern I'd seen on my analyzer. I still remember the cold feeling that washed over me. It wasn't just equipment failure. The patterns were too deliberate. I looked up from my work, and that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was an aircraft. That would make sense, right? But there was no sound. None. And it was moving in a way that it just wasn't right. It was about half a mile away, hovering over the desert. A cluster of lights arranged in a triangle. Not blinking like aircraft lights do, but steady, with this blue-white intensity I've never seen before or since. I'm not stupid. I know how the mind plays tricks, especially when you're tired, when you're alone in the dark. I told myself it was a helicopter, maybe military. They do exercises out in the desert sometimes. But then, God, I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Then it moved. Not like anything man-made moves. It was instant. 1 second it was half a mile away. The next it was directly overhead. No acceleration, no sound, no disturbance in the air. Just there. And huge. Much bigger than I initially thought. The bottom of it had these sections, like panels or segments that seemed to shift and change, catching the moonlight in ways that didn't make sense. I froze. Couldn't move. Couldn't look away. My hands were gripping the railing so hard my knuckles hurt the next day. The lights underneath it started to rotate, I guess, and then a different kind of light appeared in the center. Brighter, almost painful to look at, and it came straight toward me. This beam, this column of light, it wasn't like a spotlight or a laser. It seemed almost solid, like you could touch it. It hit me directly, and that's when things get complicated in my memory. I remember sensations more than visual details. Vibration. Every cell in my body vibrating. The air around me felt electrified. My ears popped like during rapid altitude change, and there was this pressure on my chest, like someone was pressing down, making it hard to breathe. I couldn't move. I wanted to run, to climb down, to do anything, but my body wouldn't respond. The light didn't just illuminate me, it seemed to go through me. And there was a sensation in my head, like when you're trying to remember something and it's right at the edge of your mind but you can't quite grasp it, except it felt like something else was doing the remembering, using my brain to do it. How long did it last? I don't know. My watch later showed 11:17 when I checked it, but that doesn't make sense. That would be almost 2 hours, and it didn't feel that long. Or maybe it was longer. I just don't know. The next clear memory I have is sitting at the base of the tower. Not climbing down, I have no memory of that. Just suddenly being at the bottom, sitting on the ground, my tools scattered around me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely pick up my flashlight. My head was pounding, the worst headache I've ever experienced. And I was cold, bone-deep cold, even though the temperature display in my truck later showed 78 degrees. I managed to get to my truck. My phone was on the passenger seat. Not dead anymore, fully charged. How did it get there? I have no idea. I don't remember bringing it down. The time showed 11:43 p.m. 4 hours gone, just like that. I drove home on autopilot. Didn't report the unfinished maintenance. Didn't call anyone. I just needed to be somewhere safe, somewhere normal. I remember catching glimpses of myself in the rearview mirror and not recognizing my own eyes. They looked different somehow. Wide, shocked, like they'd seen something they weren't supposed to. When I got home, I went straight to the bathroom. I needed to splash water on my face, to ground myself somehow. That's when I noticed it. On the back of my neck, just below the hairline. 3 small marks in a perfect triangle. Not cuts, not exactly burns either. More like the skin had been tested somehow, sampled. They weren't bleeding, but they were red and sensitive to touch. I took photos of them with my phone. I still have those photos, though the marks faded after about a week. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I kept replaying what I'd seen, trying to make sense of it, trying to find some ordinary explanation. Weather balloon, experimental aircraft, hallucination from exposure to something at the tower site. I considered everything, but deep down, I knew. I knew what I saw wasn't from here, wasn't made by us. The way it moved, the impossible silence, that light, and the feeling of something looking back at me through that light. Something conscious. I didn't tell anyone at first. Would you? In my line of work, with my position, my reputation, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Couldn't function normally knowing what I'd seen. And then the dreams started. Dreams so vivid they don't feel like dreams at all. And that's just the beginning of what happened. Just the first night. Because whatever I encountered out there by tower number 47B, it wasn't a one-time thing. It was just the start of something that's still unfolding, still haunting me. Something I can't escape no matter how hard I try. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. And I know they've been watching me ever since. I didn't go to work the next day. Called in sick for the first time in 5 years. My supervisor, Dave, he sounded concerned. Asked if I needed anything. I almost told him then. Almost blurted it all out. But something stopped me. Some instinct, maybe. Or fear of what would happen if I did. The day after the incident, I mostly just sat in my living room, curtains drawn, jumping at every sound. The marks on my neck burned slightly, a constant reminder that I hadn't dreamed it all. I kept checking my phone. Those pictures I took of the marks, looking at them over and over. Proof. I needed proof, even if just for myself. That evening, I noticed something strange with my electronics. The TV would change channels on its own. My microwave turned on without me touching it. My laptop's screen would flicker with these patterns. Not random static, but organized, geometric shapes that would appear for just a second before vanishing, like code or symbols. I unplugged everything, but it didn't help. My phone would light up with no notifications, showing that same triangular pattern of dots that matched the marks on my neck. I remember sitting on my couch that night, all the power in the house deliberately shut off at the breaker, using just a battery-powered lantern for light, and still, I could hear this faint humming, not from any appliance. It seemed to come from the walls themselves, or maybe from inside my own head, a vibration more than a sound, similar to what I'd felt when that light hit me. Sleep finally came around dawn, but it wasn't restful. In my dreams, I was back on that tower, but I wasn't alone. I couldn't see them clearly, just shapes, silhouettes against that brilliant light, thin, angular, moving with a fluid precision that wasn't human. And those eyes, God, those eyes, large without eyelids, staring with an intelligence that felt ancient, examining, dissecting. I woke up drenched in sweat, my heart hammering so hard I thought I was having a heart attack. But the worst part wasn't the dream itself. It was the certainty I had upon waking that it wasn't just a dream. It was a memory, something my conscious mind had blocked, but that was now seeping through the cracks. 3 days after it happened, I finally forced myself to go back to work. I needed normalcy, routine, anything to feel grounded again. Dave assigned me a simple job, replacing some equipment at a tower near Phoenix. He must have noticed something was off with me because he kept asking if I was sleeping okay, if everything was all right at home. The job site was busy, other crews working nearby. Safe, normal. I started to feel better, focusing on the familiar tasks, the solid reality of tools and equipment. But then I opened my maintenance kit and found something that wasn't mine. It was small, maybe 2 inches across. A metallic disc, but like no metal I've ever worked with. Too light, and it had this iridescent quality, shifting colors when it caught the light. One side was perfectly smooth, but the other had these intricate patterns etched into it, circles within circles, connected by lines. It reminded me of circuit diagrams, but far more complex. I had never seen this object before, never purchased it, never placed it in my kit. Yet there it was, nestled between my wire cutters and voltage meter like it belonged there. I must have stared at it for 5 minutes straight, not touching it, just looking. A cold realization washed over me. They had been in my house, in my things, or had I brought it back with me somehow? Had they put it on me, in my clothing maybe, that night on the tower? My hands were shaking when I finally picked it up. It was slightly warm to the touch, and I know how this sounds, but I swear it seemed to pulse slightly, like it had its own faint heartbeat. I quickly put it in my pocket when I heard one of the other technicians approaching. That night, I examined it more closely in my garage. I tried everything. Magnets didn't stick to it. Heat didn't seem to affect it. I couldn't scratch it even with a knife. On a hunch, I brought out my work equipment, signal analyzers, frequency detectors. They all went haywire around the disc. It was emitting something, some kind of energy or signal I couldn't identify. I should have reported it, called the police or the FBI or, I don't know, NASA, someone who deals with things like this. But who would believe me? And deep down, I was afraid. Afraid of what would happen if I drew attention to it. Afraid they would know I had talked. Because by this point, I was certain of one thing. They were still watching me. It started with small things. Items in my house moved from where I'd left them. The feeling of being observed while I showered or slept. I'd wake up at exactly 3:17 a.m. every night, alert, heart racing, with the absolute certainty that someone, something, was standing in the dark corner of my bedroom. About a week after finding the disc, the gaps in my memory started. I'd be driving to work, then suddenly find myself miles away with no recollection of the journey. I'd look at my watch and realize hours had passed in what felt like minutes. Once, I came to, standing in my backyard at midnight, barefoot in the rain, staring up at the sky with no memory of how I got there. The worst episode happened 10 days after the initial encounter. I was at the grocery store. Such a mundane place, you know, buying beer and frozen dinners. I remember reaching for a 6-pack and then nothing. My next memory is being back in my car, in a parking lot I didn't recognize, my shirt on inside out, and my left forearm covered in these strange markings. Not injuries, more like patterns pressed into my skin, geometric shapes, dots connected by lines, like a constellation map or some kind of writing. I took photos before they faded, which they did after about an hour. I've compared them to every known language, every mathematical symbol system I could find online. Nothing matches. But they mean something. I'm sure of it. That night, I had the most vivid dream yet. I was in a curved room with no corners, walls that seemed to glow from within. There was a sound, not quite language but communication nonetheless, rhythmic, mathematical almost. And I understood it, in the dream. They were explaining something to me, something important, something about time, or dimensions maybe. Concepts I couldn't quite grasp with my human mind, but that felt profound and terrifying in equal measure. I woke up with a nosebleed so severe, I had to stuff tissues up my nostril for hours, and words in my head that weren't mine. Phrases that made no sense. Junction points remain unstable. The sequence requires alignment. Third intervention necessary. I started writing everything down after that, documenting every strange occurrence, every dream, every gap in my memory. I installed cameras in my house, motion detectors, recording equipment. Most mornings, I'd find them disabled, or the footage corrupted. Static and geometric patterns similar to what I'd seen on my laptop. But I did capture something once. Just once. A shadow where no shadow should be, moving against the laws of physics. And in the audio, beneath the normal house sounds, that same vibration, that same hum I'd felt on the tower. It's been 3 weeks now since that night at tower number 47B. I haven't told anyone the full story until now. Who would believe me? But I need someone to know. I need there to be a record, because I'm starting to think they're preparing me for something. The disc I found, it's changing. The patterns on it shift slightly every day. And I'm changing too. I know things I shouldn't know. Last night I found myself drawing complex mathematical equations I don't understand. I've never been good at math, never studied physics beyond high school. But these formulas, a part of me recognizes them as calculations involving gravity, space-time, things beyond my education. And the dreams are getting more frequent, more detailed. They're showing me things, stars from perspectives impossible from Earth, structures that defy our understanding of engineering, and always, that sense of being studied, examined, like a specimen in a lab. I'm not crazy. I know how this sounds, but I'm not crazy. Something happened to me out there. Something is still happening, and I don't know what to do anymore. Yesterday I found a new mark on my body, just behind my ear, a small, perfectly straight incision, completely healed though I have no memory of receiving it. I can feel something under the skin there, something solid. When I press on it, I hear that humming again, louder than before. I think they put something inside me. I think they're tracking me. Or maybe it's more than tracking. Maybe they're changing me, preparing me. For what? I don't know. But I'm scared to find out. I've started to question everything. My sanity, my reality, my understanding of what's possible in this universe. The more I try to make sense of what's happening to me, the more I feel like I'm drowning in something too vast to comprehend. Last week, I finally worked up the courage to see a doctor about the thing behind my ear. The implant, tracker, whatever it is. I didn't tell him the truth. How could I? I said I felt a strange bump and was concerned. He examined it, felt around, then gave me this strange look. He asked if I'd had any recent surgeries or medical procedures. When I said no, his expression changed, became more guarded. He ordered an X-ray. Simple enough, right? I sat in the waiting room afterward, thumbing through old magazines, trying to act normal while my heart pounded in my chest. When he called me back in, he had this clinical detachment that wasn't there before. The X-ray was on his computer screen. He pointed to a small, bright object behind my ear, perfectly symmetrical, clearly artificial. "Mr. Harwood," he said, "I need to ask you again. Have you had any surgical procedures you haven't disclosed to me?" I told him no again, asked what it was. He said he wasn't sure, that it appeared to be some kind of foreign body, too regular to be natural. He recommended a specialist, a surgeon who could possibly remove it. I agreed, took the referral and left. I never called the surgeon, because that night I had another episode. I was sitting at my kitchen table, looking at a printout of that X-ray, when my vision began to change. It's hard to describe. Like the air itself became visible, showing currents and patterns I'd never noticed before. The walls of my house seemed suddenly thin, insubstantial, as if I could see through them to the molecular level. And then the voices started. Not audible voices, more like thoughts that weren't my own, suddenly appearing in my mind with perfect clarity. Complex ideas about space, time, matter, energy. Concepts I couldn't possibly understand with my limited human knowledge, yet somehow I was grasping them. I found myself walking to the garage, moving as if guided by some external force. I gathered tools, electronics, pieces of equipment from my work supplies. My hands were steady even as my mind raced in panic. I was building something I had no blueprint for, no understanding of, yet my fingers moved with confident precision. By dawn, it was finished. A device about the size of a shoebox, constructed from ordinary components arranged in extraordinary ways. Parts of my microwave, my old cell phone, the circuit board from my TV, all connected to that metallic disc I'd found in my toolkit. It hummed with the same frequency I'd felt that night on the tower. I don't know what it does. I don't know what it's for. But I know with absolute certainty that I didn't create it. Something created it through me, using my hands, my knowledge of electronics, supplemented with their own impossible understanding. The device sat on my workbench, pulsing with a soft blue light from somewhere within. I was afraid to touch it, afraid to be near it. I locked the garage and went inside, but I could feel it through the walls. A presence in my home, a beacon. That's when I decided I needed answers. Real answers. I called in sick again and drove back to tower number 47B. I don't know what I expected to find there. Evidence maybe. Some kind of proof that what happened wasn't just in my head. The tower stood just as it always had, indifferent to my experience, to how my life had been shattered since I last stood there. I climbed up, heart in my throat with each rung of the ladder. The maintenance panel I'd been working on that night was closed, though I had no memory of finishing the job. I opened it, and everything inside looked normal except for one small detail. The serial number on the transmitter unit didn't match our inventory. It was similar, off by just one digit, but wrong. Either someone had replaced the unit after me, or the unit had changed somehow. I took pictures, documented everything. As I was preparing to climb down, I noticed something on the platform railing. 3 small indentations in the metal, arranged in a triangle, the exact same pattern as the marks that had been on my neck. I ran my fingers over them, feeling each depression. They were precise, as if drilled into the metal with perfect accuracy. On the drive back home, my radio kept cutting out, replaced by that now familiar hum. It built in intensity until my ears hurt. I pulled over, shut off the engine, pressed my hands against my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't coming through my ears. It was inside my head. And then, suddenly, words formed out of the vibration. Sequence progressing. Preparation 67% complete. The voice, if you could call it that, had no emotion, no inflection. It was simply information, delivered directly into my consciousness. I sat there, on the shoulder of that empty desert highway, shaking so hard I couldn't hold my phone to try to record what was happening. Michael Harwood. 3rd phase imminent. My name. It knew my name. I must have blacked out then, because the next thing I knew, the sun was setting and I'd lost hours again. My car had been moved. I'd pulled over on the westbound side of the highway, but now I was parked at a scenic overlook 2 miles east. The gas tank, which had been nearly empty, was full, and there was desert sand on my shoes, though I had no memory of leaving the car. When I finally got home, I went straight to the garage, dreading what I might find. The device I'd built was gone, completely gone, along with all the tools I'd used to create it. The workbench was clean, as if nothing had ever been there. But on the wall above where it had been, scratched into the drywall with something sharp, was a series of numbers and symbols. Coordinates, I realized. Latitude and longitude, plus something else. Figures that looked like dates, times perhaps, but formatted in a way I didn't recognize. I entered the coordinates into my computer. They pointed to a location in the Sonoran Desert, about 60 miles from my house. Remote, no roads, nothing on the satellite view but empty landscape. I knew then what the 3rd phase would be. They wanted me to go to those coordinates. They had built a device through me, taken it back, and now they were summoning me. The implant behind my ear throbbed as I stared at the map, as if confirming my suspicion. I should have been terrified. I should have run, or called for help, or checked myself into a psychiatric facility. But instead, I felt an eerie calm settle over me, a sense of inevitability. Whatever was happening had been set in motion that night on the tower, and it was going to continue with or without my cooperation. That night, the dreams were different. More vivid, more coherent. I saw beings, not clearly, always partially obscured by light or shadow, moving around me as I lay paralyzed, communicating with gestures and that same humming vibration. examining the inside of my mouth, my eyes, taking samples of my hair, my blood. I felt no pain, but the violation, the helplessness, was worse than any physical discomfort. One of them approached my head, holding something small and metallic. I couldn't move, couldn't protest as they positioned it behind my ear. In the dream, I understood. They needed to track me, to monitor my progress, to communicate when necessary. I woke up crying, the sheets soaked with sweat. The digital clock by my bed read 3:17 a.m., just as it always did during these episodes. The numbers glowed with unusual intensity, burning into my retinas. And as I watched, they changed, shifting to show a countdown. 96, 95, 59, 95, 58, 4 days. Whatever was going to happen at those coordinates was scheduled for exactly 4 days from that moment. I called work the next morning and requested vacation time. All 2 weeks I had saved up. Dave hesitated, asked if everything was all right. I lied, said I was dealing with some personal issues, needed time to clear my head. He agreed, told me to take care of myself. I spent that day preparing, bought camping equipment, water, food, a new phone with GPS capability, batteries, flashlights. I didn't know what I was walking into, but some part of me, the rational part that was still fighting against all this, wanted to be prepared. I also bought a small digital voice recorder, high quality, designed for clear audio even in windy conditions. If something was going to happen to me out there in the desert, I wanted evidence, proof, something to leave behind so people would know the truth. I'm recording this now, 3 days before I'm supposed to be at those coordinates. My voice sounds strange to my own ears, detached, like someone else is speaking through me. Maybe they are. The countdown continues in my dreams, in flashing digital clocks, in patterns of light on my ceiling. 72 hours, 71 hours, 70 hours. Preparation is nearly complete, whatever that means. I've started having nosebleeds every few hours. Small electrical devices malfunction when I touch them. Last night, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror, and for a split second my eyes looked different. Larger, darker, reflecting light in a way human eyes don't. I should be afraid. I know that. But the fear has been replaced by something else now. A kind of resignation mixed with curiosity, anticipation. It's as if whatever they put inside me is changing not just my body, but my emotional responses too. I wonder sometimes if I'll come back from the desert, if I'll ever see another human being after I reach those coordinates, if I'll still be me if I do return. I've written letters to my parents, my sister. Nothing specific. I couldn't tell them the truth, just that I love them, that I'm sorry for being distant these past few weeks. I've put my affairs in order as best I can. Paid off my credit card, cleaned my house, donated some old clothes. It feels like preparing for death in a way. Not that I think they're going to kill me. No, what I fear is something else entirely. I fear they're going to change me so completely that whoever or whatever comes back won't be Michael Harwood anymore. The device in my ear throbs constantly now. Sometimes I hear snippets of that vibrating language, instructions maybe, or updates on my preparation. The countdown continues, relentless. Tomorrow, I'm driving out to the desert. I've mapped a route as close as I can get by car, then I'll hike the rest of the way. I'm bringing this recorder. If you're listening to this, it means someone found it. It means I left it behind. It means I wanted someone to know what happened to me. I'm not crazy. I know what I saw that night on the tower. I know what's been happening to me since. And tomorrow, I'll know why. God help me, I'm actually going. I've fought it, questioned it, tried to rationalize it away, but in the end, I'm going to those coordinates. Whether by my own choice or theirs, I don't even know anymore. The strangest part? There's a moment every evening, just as the sun sets, when the fear fades completely and I feel this connection, this sense of being part of something vast and ancient and important. In those moments, I almost welcome what's coming, and that terrifies me most of all. I'm recording this from somewhere else. I don't know if anyone will ever hear these words. I don't know if I'll ever find my way back to where I was before. I reached the coordinates yesterday at sunset. Nothing there but sand, rocks, the distant mountains. I waited, watching the stars appear one by one, questioning everything, even as the device behind my ear hummed with increasing intensity. At exactly midnight, the air changed, became charged, like before a lightning storm. My skin tingled, the sand beneath my feet vibrated, and then the darkness opened. That's the only way I can describe it. A vertical tear in the night itself, edges rippling with that same blue-white light I'd seen on the tower. Not a craft this time, a doorway, a threshold between here and somewhere else. They were waiting on the other side. I could see their silhouettes, those impossible proportions. They didn't speak, not with words, but I understood what they wanted. I had been prepared for this moment. Changed gradually, cell by cell, thought by thought. I'd like to say I hesitated, that I fought against it somehow. But the truth is, I walked forward willingly. The Michael who had been so afraid, who had recorded all those desperate words, he was already gone. What remained was something transitional. As I crossed that threshold, knowledge flooded my consciousness. Not human knowledge. Something older, vaster. I understood then that they hadn't chosen me randomly. Something in my genetic structure, my neurological patterns, made me compatible with their process. I wasn't the first, won't be the last. I exist now in between states. Not fully human anymore, not fully like them. A bridge, an interface. What they've shown me defies explanation in human language. Dimensions folded upon dimensions. Time as a physical property that can be traversed. Civilizations spanning millions of years. They're not invaders, not saviors either. They're observers, collectors, archivists of a kind. And now, so am I. I sometimes remember being afraid, being Michael. Those memories grow more distant with each passing moment. I'm returning briefly, placing this recorder where it might be found. One last human act before I complete the transition, before I join them permanently. I saw beyond the veil of our limited perception, and now I can never go back. I'm not crazy. I saw them, and now I am them. If you've experienced something similar to my story, you're not alone. I've started this channel to connect with others who've had encounters. Subscribe now to hear more testimonials that will make you question everything you thought you knew. And remember, the next time you look up at the night sky, they might already be looking back at you.